The socialist mayor Zohran Mamdani just did something that has Democrats all across the country turning their backs on him once and for all. And it's not just coming from high-profile Democrats. There are literally millions of New Yorkers calling for Mamdani to be thrown in jail. They're suing him, and they're openly rebelling. Stick with me to the very end of this video, because by the end, you're going to understand exactly why the ground is shifting under this guy's feet and why even his own party isn't going to be able to save him. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, celebrating yet another glorious day in the Trumpian golden age that you made possible back in November 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Speaking of changing the world, just a quick reminder, when you support this channel, you're not just helping a show, you're helping build and reawaken Christian civilization. Your gifts help us launch books like Civ calls them, or push truthful articles onto platforms like MSN, and grow communities that stand for faith, family, and freedom. That's what building civilization looks like in practice. Books, media, and communities your kids can actually live in. If you want that future to keep expanding, click the link, chip in whatever you feel led to give, and help us keep building a vibrant and flourishing conservative future. All right, I'm just going to come out and say it. Mamdani's in a lot of hot water right now. Even Democrats are admitting it. And it's not just political. It could be, in fact, legal. He gone done a little doo-doo here, right? If you're not familiar with it, Mamdani published a searchable database naming and listing addresses of New York City property owners potentially subject to the new pied-à-terre tax on non-primary luxury residences. So if you own a home, a condo, a penthouse, whatever in New York City, but you don't live there full time, you will now be slapped with a massive new tax. It's called the pied-à-terre tax. Mamdani was absolutely giddy when he announced it. He couldn't wait to tax American citizens. But this database actually makes public where these people live in the city. It publishes their addresses. Mamdani's administration compiled, cleaned, and organized this data into an easily searchable single database, explicitly singling out, quote, the rich, transforming scattered public records into what amounts to a targeted directory. Uniswap founder Hayden Adams called it the worst mass doxing he's ever seen, noting nearly every unit in some luxury building was listed, not just the tax-eligible ones. Venture investor Nick Carter warned, rightly by the way, that this mirrors patterns that we saw in Europe some decades ago, where similar wealth address lists encouraged the masses to go visit them and take their anger out on them. Publishing the addresses of the wealthy historically actually preceded kidnappings and violent attacks. Blockchain security firm Certicay's data shows wrench attacks targeting wealthy individuals have already risen sharply worldwide in 2026. But it's worse than that. Mamdani isn't just doxing the wealthy. As it turns out, he sold this pied-à-terre tax by claiming it would only apply to about 30,000 homes in the city, right? So these are, after all, the ultra wealthy, the billionaires that need to pay their fair share, right? Wrong. The list is staggering in scope. It reportedly lists over 960,000 properties or ownership records. Nearly 1 million addresses are in this so-called wealthy database for all to see. And of course, it includes modest homes and even a shopping center that obviously stands outside the tax's intended luxury target. Needless to say, there's a lot of chatter throughout the city arguing that a public official using government resources to compile and publicize a target list of private citizens' identities and addresses, especially amid heightened political violence, right, including that recent hate crime attack in the Upper West Side, this constitutes nothing less than reckless endangerment and incitement. This isn't routine transparency. This is a nefarious target database. This is a green light to go ahead and confront these people. This would not be the first time in history that we had a published list of, quote, class enemies for public shaming or mob action. That was a hallmark tactic of Soviet Maoist-era campaigns against property-owning bourgeois. And opponents argue this database functions similarly by painting the wealthy as targets rather than protecting them as private citizens. And the densely Democrat population in New York is indeed starting to turn on this guy. But again, it doesn't stop there. Did you know that as state-run grocery stores are closing all across the country, guess what? Guess what Mamdani's doing? Did he learn from that? Of course not. What do you think he is, an economist or something? He just announced that New York City is opening 5 subsidized grocery stores that'll have all items at a 30% discount. 5 stores, 30% discount. Not bad, right? Of course, the fundamental question is, how are they getting that 30% discount? Who's paying for that discount? Remember, in the midst of all of these socialist utopian promises, someone is always paying. Now, like with the pied-à-terre tax, they'll say, it's only the wealthy. It's only the richest Americans, the billionaires will pay for it. No. It's New York City taxpayers that are footing the bill. They will be spending upwards of $70 million to cover rent and expenses across all 5 grocery stores. And here's the beauty. Anyone can shop there. There's no means testing. Anyone can shop there, including billionaires. Freaking billionaires could shop there if they want. Billionaires can fill up their carts all they want with 30% discounted foods that, as far as they're concerned, taxpayers have subsidized for them. You can't make this stuff up. Needless to say, business owners are absolutely livid. They are suing the city because of these stores, as they should. After all, why should grocery store owners have to pay to subsidize their competition? I mean, think of the absurdity of that. They've been forced to actually pay their competitors who are underpricing them. It's obviously a mess. And now some of the highest level Democrats are finally, openly, publicly distancing themselves from this Marxist embarrassment. Wait until you see this. Fortunately, millions are realizing that the news is broken, but they don't know where to turn for reliable news and information. Well, that's precisely where Ground News comes in. Ground News pulls headlines from over 50,000 news sources and makes it easier to understand what's actually happening. You could see the political bias of each outlet, insights like reliability and outlet ownership, and how coverage breaks down across the spectrum. That's why over 1 million people have downloaded Ground News. Check it out for yourself at ground.news/Steve. My favorite feature is the blind spot feed. It shows you which stories are blowing up on one side of the aisle, but barely mentioned on the other. It's the clearest way to see media bias in action. So, for example, here's a story that's barely getting any traction on the left. It's about Democrat strategist James Carville totally ripping into the far-left socialists, destroying the Democrat Party. I mean, he's actually claiming the party is going to end up splitting apart. Isn't it interesting that the legacy media isn't making this a front-page story? Now, of course, the right has its own blind spots, too, but now you'll know. With every story, Ground News shows you the entire spectrum of who's reporting from left, right, and center, how reliable each source is, and who owns each outlet. It's everything the corporate press doesn't want you to see. Right now, you can get 40% off the Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to all the features that I personally use for about $5 a month. Just visit ground.news/Steve, click the link in the description, or scan the QR code. That's ground.news/Steve. Right now, as we speak, some of the most powerful figures in the Democrat Party are publicly abandoning Zohran Mamdani, and it did not happen quietly. They're calling this guy out for the disaster that he is, not necessarily for the country, because they don't really care about the country, but for their party. Mark Penn, the man who was Bill Clinton's own pollster and chief strategist, has just gone public tearing apart Mamdani's signature luxury property tax. Again, Mamdani sold this thing to New Yorkers as a narrow tax, hitting just around 30,000 of New York's wealthiest property owners. And Mark Penn is rightly calling him out on that. He's saying he obviously lied. He's pointing out that the city's own valuation system is arguing that the tax actually hits nearly 1 million New York City property owners, not 30,000. You know, that's quite the discrepancy the more I think about that. 30,000 versus a million. Regardless, Penn is warning that this tax could crater property values and drive investment out of the city entirely. Now, I want that to hit you. This is not a Republican saying this. This is not a Fox News correspondent. This is Bill Clinton's own guy. This is a Democrat strategist, one of the most successful in modern political era, one of the ones who helped build the modern Democrat Party, telling New York that Mamdani lied about the scope of his own tax plan, and he is bad news for them, and he is bad news for the party. But it didn't stop there. Rahm Emanuel, Obama's own chief of staff and former mayor of Chicago, has Chicago fallen, has it not? But since him, I guess he's halfway decent for what you could possibly get in that city. But he revealed that he sat down with Mamdani one-on-one for 90 minutes and directly confronted him over his very controversial stance on Israel, specifically over Mamdani's continued use of the jihadist phrase from the river to the sea, warning him that this isn't going to end well with the Democrat establishment. This will not end well for Mamdani. Now, weirdly, Mamdani's own communications director came out and denied that conversation ever happened. That conversation with Rahm Emanuel, it didn't happen. They are... They're in effect calling Rahm Emanuel a liar. They're openly saying that confrontation over Israel never happened. Regardless, Emanuel is one of the growing number of Democrat voices coming out saying that their party has a choice. They can focus on winning tough races and flipping red seats blue in swing districts, or they can focus on abolishing prisons, abolishing the Senate, and packing the Supreme Court. But you can't do both. You can appeal to the undecided middle, or you can appeal to the rabid radical far left, but you can't do both. So are the Democrats going to learn from this? It doesn't look like it. And that's because of a pattern that we've seen historically with dying electoral parties. Remember, we talked about this before. When a party is in decline, it tends to shrivel up around its most extreme members because they're the diehards. They're the ones who aren't going anywhere. They're all in. But the more it consolidates around its most extreme members, the more the party alienates itself from the mainstream, which causes the party to lose more members, which in turn causes the party to consolidate even more around its extreme, and the whole cycle repeats. That's what's been happening with the Democrat Party. And their establishment leadership is slowly but surely, to their panic, beginning to recognize it. Again, even Clinton's Democrat strategist James Carville is openly, publicly saying that the party is going to inevitably split over this. What's left of the last remaining vestiges of traditional Democrats, they are going to have to leave the party if these radical socialists actually end up taking over. But I would argue that takeover is inevitable. It's baked into the cake, given how the party is itself in such decline and the pattern of that decline. So let Mamdani have his party. Let him have his moment of self-honoring and gratification. Every day his influence increases is another step towards the party's slow but inevitable demise. What I just shared with you barely scratches the surface. I put together a free mini ebook that goes deeper into everything we just talked about: the collapse of the globalist order, the rise of a new civilization rooted in faith, family, and freedom, and what it means for your family right now. It is completely free, no catch. Click the link below, grab your copy, and get the full picture. Because once you understand what is actually happening in this moment, you cannot unsee it.